Here's what I think, Rece, becomes the biggest story, like you said, about Lane Kiffin and making the playoff. I think this philosophical question, which is a great podcast question because there's no direct answer to it, that's going to loom over the next 6 weeks. Can a college football playoff coach who plays his first game December 19th, I believe, take another job? And can a school wait for a college football playoff coach? My hunch, having been around a lot of these searches and how just intense they are and the scrutiny, and my hunch is no. Now, could Alex Golish, John Sumrall, Bob Chesney, one of these mid-major guys, walk into his team room after they win their conference championship and say, hey, I've accepted the fill-in-the-blank job. I'm tripling my salary. You guys are all going to have opportunity to. We're going to go win the playoff, but I want you to know now so it's not lingering that I'm leaving. Could a group of five coach do that and get away with it? Probably. Could, Lane Kiffin, I think I did this in a column last week of the guys who could move who are projected to make the playoff, right? So it's not Ryan Day or Dan Lanning or Sig. It's Brent Key, it's Lane Kiffin, and there was one other.
Clark Lee.
Yeah, Clark Lee, sure. Clark Lee, yeah, would be a great, would be a great example. Can a guy like that who's at a power conference job, can he wait it out? And can a school wait it out? Can you look your team in there and be like, hey, coach, everybody's talking about you for the Florida job. And you say, nope, I'm locked in and ready to go. And then if you, can you risk those relationships? And then look, the opportunity. Ole Miss could win the national title. They're not favored to do so, but they could absolutely do so. Yes. There's no question they could do so. So, and then if you win December 19th and then you win and you win and you win, what day is the title game this year, Rece? It was January
19th.
20th last year, 19th.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
How would it feel if you were a coach? How would LSU be feeling? How would Governor Landry be feeling on January 18th if they still didn't have a coach? You think everybody know what it was if Ole Miss was in the title game? So the variables on this to me are fascinating, and I think it's a really interesting philosophical question that's going to guide a lot of these searches. Are you better off Missouri now is on the outside looking in? If you're Eli Drinkwitz, are you better off for your personal future not making the playoff? Does that put you
coaching transfer portal?
Does that put you in
transfer portal?
Yeah. Does that put you in a better position to make a job to get a job?
You remember in Michigan basketball did this 89. Bill Frieder announced before the NCAA basketball tournament he was going to take the job at Arizona State at the end of the year, and Bo Schembechler immediately fired him and declared famously, "A Michigan man will coach Michigan, not an Arizona State man." And then they put in Steve Fisher, and they went and won the national title. Yeah. So back then, no, I think you could do it and still keep your locker room because it's look, I'm the coach here now, and we're all in this together. Let's go win. I don't really think the players would be like, he's a traitor, let's just torch the season. But I don't think that would probably go down. So I think a guy like Lane Kiffin, who is literally just, they're just shooting cannons of money towards him in all directions. He's probably not going to be available. It would be a very, very difficult thing to do to leave a playoff team if you are the head coach. And you're going to get ripped for it, and people are going to question you and all of that. So I think that's a pretty tough go.
I wonder about the cost down the line, because both of you guys, and I hope I'm keeping up with you to this level, have a pretty good feel for what this new era is like, and that some of the old feelings aren't as pervasive as they once were in terms of, loyalty to good old State U. In the past, I think anyone who did that always risked the being hit in recruiting. Well, he's not trustworthy, he's not honest. Look what he did to this last team. I feel like that's a lot different now, for the reasons that we've all talked about, and that there's a lot of you guys can go with me. And oh, by the way, if we're all being honest with one another, you guys can leave, and you guys can leave, and we can bring in new players, and that's just the way it works. It's really an interesting dynamic, and it brings up the question to me. And you always react based on what political pressures or other pressures that you're feeling, but in a vacuum, if I were a sitting AD with one of these jobs and I had a guy that I felt like would take the job, I would sit till the end of the playoff because for this reason. If you hire a guy that you're not sold on, you may be right back in this position in 2 years anyway. We used to say 3 or 4. Now you're going to say probably 2. So why not wait it out? It might hurt you the first season, but if you believe he's the guy and he's the guy you want to tie your future to as the athletic director, maybe that's what you say at the press conference. This puts us a little bit behind. We get that, but this guy's so good. And I'm so fired up about having him lead good old State U here for all of you wonderful alums that we're going to get through this year because he's a great coach. But boy, you just wait and see what happens the next. You know, I mean, I think I would go that if I had a guy I felt like was so far above everybody else, and I felt like I was settling if I didn't make the absolute best run at him at the end, no matter what his parameters were. Now, all of these deals get done hush-hush behind. I haven't talked to anybody, but, my representative has. So maybe you've got a really good inclination to do that. I will acknowledge you have to feel really good about him saying yes when that guy's playoff run is over. You have to feel almost 100%. But I do it because I think it's more important to get the guy that you want than it is to get somebody in place for one season.
I think if I think for a Kiffin, maybe you sit there and you do that. You have to have a shirt. You either really need a signed deal. The Kiffin's coming. Right?
Deal in the drawer. And it's done. And then you just sit on it because you don't want to be holding the bag. The problem is transfer portal is what? January 3rd. They moved it back some, but if you coach into the 20th, who's well, it's closed.
The team.
It's closed. It's basically closed.
There's
There's also no spring portal. Like you could
No.
come in at a high level with a lot of money and pluck a few key pieces to be fine the next year under this year's rules. Next year's rules, you can't do that.
Well, the big thing you would have to do under my scenario, and I realize all of this stuff is new and unfolding, is you would have to have money in the NIL collective, and all of the guys you want to keep, you'd have to say, we're overpaying you.
Yeah.
Here's more money than you're going to get to leave. And
I would think you would need a head coach to say, I'm going to keep coaching this school, but I am going to, you have to announce it. In the NFL, you'll have assistant coaches, a coordinator is going to get a job and then they wait. And it's sometimes after the Super Bowl, right? Well, okay, this is who we're going to get, but he'll sometimes start working on his staff. I mean, I don't know how you could do it. If you're going to go deep in the playoff and you're coaching on the 19th and you haven't set up a staff at your new thing, you haven't announced you're going, who's sticking around? Why are the players sticking around? They're all getting poached. It'd be very challenging. And yes, you might get the guy for the next 10 years, but you have really just decimated your program. That you better really believe. Now, maybe a Lane Kiffin is worth that, but it's not like LSU's they're going to have very attractive candidates. They're not going to go very low. It's a different era of the sport. LSU's advantages aren't as great as they were, but there's still a lot of advantages.
Absolutely.
I think the only way you could really do it at a big time place is you hire a GM and you have that person put together the roster. And look, as much as scheme and fit and connection and campus and what your major is going to be matters, money matters the most now. So this guy would come in and say, hey, we're going to pay you this. We're going to pay you this. We're going to build it like this. We're going to bring in great people to coach you. Most NFL free agents aren't worried about who's going to coach them as much as what their salaries. They want to win and everything, but they're not, they're not as dialed in on that. And we're getting to that model. But again, if you're going to have you're waiting for a thumper, you're going to have the thumper okay with that GM doing this stuff. And if that guy's trying to puppeteer stuff behind the scene, it's a high wire act to get that done with a playoff coach. We could see somebody try it and it would be fascinating theater. Rece, how long was it between when they fired Mike Shula and hired Nick Saban? Wasn't it 42 days?
Yeah, it was a long time. Mal Moore. Now, the thing is had Rich Rodriguez followed through, he would have had that job in a matter of just a few days because they spoke, as I recall, at the National Football Foundation banquet in New York City, and it appeared to have been a done deal. Then after that, I guess it's okay. Mal Moore has passed away. I remember having a conversation with him, and right after he made the decision on Mike Shula, and he said, "What do you think about Nick Saban?" And I said, that's like the best possible hire you could make. I said, but I would be stunned if he after 2 years is ready to come back. And I remember Mal saying, this was before the Rich Rod things, I think I can get him. And I said, well, if you can, you should. But I was an advocate for in full disclosure, I was an advocate for Rodriguez too. I think Rich is an excellent coach, is, and would have won at Alabama had he gone there. But, after that, when that didn't happen, he sort of went with the all-in thing. And then famously, as he has told many people and said publicly, that he told the pilot of the university plane, if I don't have Nick Saban on this plane coming back to Tuscaloosa with me, just go ahead and fly me to Cuba because I'm not going back either. So, it was, but it was a long time. It was well over a month when they were sort of rudderless, but you didn't have the dynamic of the portal, the way we have it now and all of that kind of thing.
If Alabama went 42 days on a job search now, Tuberville would install himself as the head coach of Alabama, right? He's going to be the governor. Like, there's got to be some kind of power in there. National state emergency. All of a sudden, Tommy T's back, baby.
Maybe Senator Feinbaum could insert himself.
Senator Feinbaum is the offensive coordinator. Tommy Tuberville, head coach. Or can you imagine those fights? You think Saban and Lane clashed on the sideline? Imagine Tuberville and Feinbaum trying to Saturday night on the road at Georgia. They'd be screaming at each other. That would be wild. Yeah, it's much more colloquial back then.